Hi everyone. In this post, I am going to try to talk about a little bit about my awakening and ascension journey and the start of my twin flame journey. I used to live in US for a while, but I was born and brought up in India. And after my bachelor's in pharmacy, I went to US. I did a master's there in pharmacology. Actually, I had gone there to do a PhD program, but I actually failed my PhD program qualifiers and ended up just graduating with a master's in pharmacology. But while I was doing and finishing up my master's, I also gave some licensing exams and started working as a pharmacist there in US. And the first stage of being a pharmacist there was to do an internship. Then I became a pharmacist. I had a lot of ups and downs in my journey, and because of that, I wanted to talk about that in this post. Because most of the time in India and also in the world, people are always very much obsessed with competition and winning things and doing things in life that is about success, material success, and achieving something in life, getting awards. And whereas the way I was raised up, those things somehow didn't end up mattering so much in my life. And even when they were mattering, because I am a little bit competitive and ambitious by nature, but somehow certain things just orchestrated themselves around my life that I ended up not always being successful in many things. Though I have been successful in so many other things, like it's not easy for everyone to just get good scores in GRE and get admissions in US colleges. Many of my compare like same age friends from school, friends from college days, they tried to excel and give GRE, but it didn't pan out for them. But for me, somehow the circumstances were such that it panned out, and I was fortunate to go to US under a scholarship because my father was a government employee. We didn't have that much money when growing up, and we lived a very minimalistic lifestyle. So for us, like for him spending lakhs of money for me just to enter the US was a huge amount. And if I hadn't got any scholarship or anything, I wouldn't have been able to study there in US. So I was lucky to get entry, but after getting entry, staying there is also not an easy thing because you face a lot of different challenging life circumstances. So I will say my ascension journey was there all throughout my life. I am right now a 40-year-old, 40 plus person in age, and my ascension journey has been essentially going on since childhood days. Because in childhood days also, I faced a lot of conflict in the way I was raised. We didn't have like a normal lifestyle in our house, so there was a little bit of ups and downs when growing up as well. So I had ups and downs in economic things while growing up, and then when I lived in US, I lived there for 13 years. I wasn't like, I will not consider myself like financially completely successful throughout my 13 years of life there. But even though I was not financially successful, I was intellectually very successful. I got 3 master's degree from US. I even the first one was a doctoral program in which I had applied, and I ended up not doing the doctoral degree. But before coming back from US also, I had entered another doctoral degree program and I finished half of the coursework. But then because of visa issues, other issues that were coming up, there was always basically in my life, and that was my ascension path, that difficulties would come up in life. But I have been very adaptable in my life. So even though some difficulty or the other arose, maybe it was because of financial issues, some difficulty was arising, maybe because I didn't finish a degree program, some difficulties arose. Whatever was happening, every time a difficulty arose, I adapted to the circumstance, changed my life direction based on what difficulty came up. So for me, the first difficulty, like the major adulthood difficulty that came up, was my mom's death. My mother died when I was 20 years old. I was in my final year. In the beginning of my final year, my mother passed away. And that was a very painful journey, obviously. If you are you have just entered your 20s and one of your parents is not there, it's a hard thing to manage. And mothers are really the social framework of every Indian family. They are the ones who do majority of things things when a family is running. Like, we children don't usually realize how much our mothers are doing for us. And only after she passed away, I realized how much, I was missing her, and how much like she was needed in our lives. So obviously, in the final year, when I was finishing my final year, it was a tough time, and I cried almost entirely through my final year, for not having a mom. And then after that, I took a time off. I see over here also, so there are so many kids who would easily have, like, started focusing on the next stages of my career. In fact, all of my batchmates who went to US had already started planning going on to US. So they had started studying for US, applying to US in the third year itself. Final year was the time when they were giving applications to US colleges. And by the time final year ended, they had already got these admit letters to universities in US. But I didn't do that. And out of, like, our class had about 30 students. Out of 30 students, about 10, 11 students applied abroad and for studies. And out of those 10, 11 students also, there's only me and another friend who went to US a year after our graduation, because we didn't think about doing these studies probably for going to US. She had a different set of reasons, and my reasons were just that I didn't even think about going to US. I only thought about going to US after my mom passed away. So basically, it was getting difficult to live in the same house with my dad. My brother was in the hostel at that time. So my dad made sure that my dad also got a little fearful. So here's the thing. This is the other thing and challenge as an Ascension that I had to go through. I had to go through a family setting where people were always into this fear dynamics, fear of lack of money, fear of love, fear of many other societal paradigms, and not just fear, the victimhood mentality that many Indians who have had poverty stricken backgrounds, they can have that issue, or who have had some unfortunate circumstances happening in their life. That victimhood mentality is also a part of many Indian family structure that I have observed along all through my life. So these are the things that I think I came to overcome in this lifetime, and because of which all these circumstances started showing up in my life constantly throughout many years and decades of my life in various versions and forms. So, but because these challenges happened, that is the reason why I am where I am right now, and that is the reason why my life is taken a very different turn than many other normal people who are 40 years of age. Most my friends, they have their own jobs and lakhs of money in the bank account. They own a lot of properties. They do a lot of socially acceptable things. They have family. They have one or two kids. They have a good house. They have a bad house. Everyone has their own set of things going on in their 40s with their own kind of lifestyle choices. But here I am. Here I am, a single 40-year-old woman. I am divorced, but I almost can consider myself as single only, and that is a separate story. But that is the thing. Like, I am single. I don't have any kids. I was financially very viable when I was in US, and I worked for 13 years, studied for part of the 13 years in US. So I did all these intellectual things that most women my age don't even explore or get to explore, because they don't get the independence to do it. They don't get the family support to do it. They don't get the social circumstances to do it. So many Indian women don't even get to explore this aspect of their personality, where they don't have any burden, social burden, economic burden on them to take care of a family, to take care of a budget of a family, and things like that. So that way, though for many years of my life I used to feel sad that why am I not married, and I didn't get married until my mid 30s. So till my mid 30s I was like every other Indian woman. I wanted to get married, I wanted to have a kid, I wanted to have the normal lifestyle that every Indian woman wants. But despite that, that just didn't materialize for me. I dated people, I found people online via matrimonial sites with whom I talked, and they spoke with me. Sometimes I went to visit them in the state they lived in US. Sometimes they came to visit me. Sometimes when I was in India, some boys' parents came to see me. All these things happened. And because I was brought up in a certain way there, where, my family life was not an ideal and perfect life, it was filled with a lot of neglect and neglectful childhood type of a setting. But because I had this neglectful childhood, because my parents were just busy with whatever they were doing and whatever was going on in their internal lives, they didn't have the time or energy to give to me. But because of that, I got the what was the flip side. What was so I'm trying to pose this video to talk about flip sides to every dark experience that can show up in our life, because that is where my ascension path was, and I hope that other people can learn something from it. So for me, what was the flip side here? The dark thing that happened was my mom passed away. I had really tough final year, but and after final year also I wouldn't have actually applied to US. But what happened was, because my dad was also socioeconomically from the kind of family setting we were living in, he had told us all the time that if you get free education, you take it. I studied in free seat in school also, in college days also. So he was like, you do a free education, then that's fine. So in US when I applied also, I made sure that I applied and saying this only, that if I don't get a scholarship, I will not be able to accept any seats. So out of like 8 colleges that I had applied, I had only received admission in 2 colleges. Both of them gave me scholarship. One was in environmental toxicology and one was in pharmacology, and I ended up taking the pharmacology one because it was a higher ranked university. It was also closer to a state where one of my cousins used to live. So based on that, my dad decided, okay, at least I have a cousin who lives in US, so he was okay with me going there. But I'm pretty sure if my mom had not passed away, my dad wouldn't have even given me this luxury of leaving India, because he comes from a very conservative family. And the second thing, why he paid for also my couple of lakhs that was needed for me to apply to US and then go to US, that also he wouldn't have done that unless he had equally invested some lakhs of money for my brother's education. He used to study in a hostel outside of Mumbai, in a college outside of Mumbai. So when my mom passed away, my dad somehow felt that my brother should come and live with us in Bombay. So he made sure that my brother would get admission in some Mumbai college after 1 year of finishing his college in outside Mumbai. And for that, because he was earlier, I think, in a free seat, but to get him transferred to a different college in Mumbai, even though it was a government college, they had to do some pay some extra money for him to get this seat in the Mumbai college. So my dad had invested a couple of lakhs for my brother, and that's how I ended up asking him to do that for me. So, the an unfortunate circumstance opened the doorway 2 years later for me to be able to have 1.5 years later, I had the courage to ask him to pay for my US applications and everything. And after that, 2 years later, I went to US after my mom had passed away. So my mom, that was also an unfortunate thing. My mom never got to see in person any of the educational achievements and other things that I did when I was living in US. Also because I didn't have a mom and a strong connection, I was always very distant from my brother and dad, because they never used to understand also certain things. Like, to them it was very strange if I talk about some out of the Indian norm things about living conditions or about how we should live life. It was very difficult for them to understand that. Not only 20 years back it was difficult, 10 years back also it was difficult. Even right now it is very difficult for my family to understand anything that I do that is different from the Indian norm. And which is this thing with many Indians. Most Indians are very reluctant to shift away from the dynamics of what goes on in their family setting, in their cultural setting, in their religious setting, in their social setting. It is very difficult for them to shift and change. But somehow, because I was afforded some of these luxuries, like because in childhood parents were not paying attention, what was I doing? When my parents were not paying attention, I did ask my dad sometimes to bring me books from his work library. occasionally he will get books for me when he was not busy at work and had the time in his half an hour time to go and get me some foreign book. And I used to love reading in English, so he would always get me some books about for I was a kid. He would get me all these kids book like Nancy Drew, Hardy Boy. So there were all these teenagers having all these teen adventures. And then apart from my dad would get it like maybe once a month or something. But as a child, my grandparents, my mama used to live in UK for a while. He was a doctor in UK, and so they also had I am a Bengali, so we have this taste for reading literature a lot. So my family had this penchant for reading British books and all. So throughout childhood, I read a lot of Enid Blyton books, a lot of British authors, not just British authors. As I grew up in our college library in 11th, 12th, we had lots of access to even Russian authors, French authors. So like that, I got to, and I used to love reading classics. So I read like those classics from 200, 300 years back that were written during the French Revolution time, or I read books by Charles Dickens. So these are the kind of things I used to do as a child. So as a teenager, while parents didn't have time, I was spending my time reading lots and lots of books, not just as a child, but entire like childhood, 20 years of my child, not 20 years, say I started reading like from 8, 10 years of age. From 10 years of age onwards, I have been just reading books and stories, because I love stories of any kind. And if it is in English, that's the best for me. Other languages like Hindi and Bengali, I can understand reading, but I don't enjoy usually reading in Hindi or Bengali. But English gave me access to not only reading English literature from UK or Europe or UK or America, but they also gave me access to all those, non-English speaking authors who have been translated into writing in English, and have read their works, like people like Paulo Coelho, who is from Latin America, and he lives in Europe, but his books initially have been written in Spanish. It's later on that it was translated into English for us non-Spanish speaking fans of his. So that's what I did throughout my life. So even when in US, when I went there, over there also for decades, I read. I was not just a studious student of doing degree programs, but I was also reading lots and lots of fictional books. Books are the places where I learn from life, because if you have read Paulo Coelho's book, you will see that he gives a lot of life lessons in his book. Another author who gives life lessons in a very magical manner is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He also writes about normal Latin American problems, but he writes it in such a beautiful manner that he brings out both the pain as well as the magic that life can offer to any human being. So these kind of authors influenced my outlook about life, and I had a very idealistic outlook about life. And of course, being a teenager, I also read a lot of romantic novels. So I had always got this different perception about romance. Likewise, being an Indian, we love Bollywood movies. So I used to love watching a lot of Bollywood movies also while growing up. And even in US, when I was there in US, I would constantly watch at that initial 5-10 years period of our US life. All of us who were students in US at the time, we had nothing else to do. So once a month, we would go and rent out some recent movie that has come out. They were all pirated copies most of the time, but we would rent out those pirated copies of those movies that got released in India, that we are missing India, and we would sit and watch those movies. Only after 10-15 years of living in the state where I lived in, they have 15 years, almost like 15 years passed before any Indian movie started getting screened in the local movie theaters of the city in which I lived. And why after almost not 15, maybe 13, 14 years later, they started screening. They did occasionally once in a while, one screening, like, the movies I watched in the theater was like Devdas was the first movie I watched, but Devdas was shown only in one theater for one show. And that was in like 2002 or 3, whenever that movie came out. That is when I saw it. After that, the next movie I saw, I don't remember the order in which I saw them, but it was like I saw Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, I saw Lage Raho Munna Bhai, I saw Rang De Basanti, I saw Ranjana. These four movies, imagine how many years later they have come. And like that, once a year or once in 2 years, the person who used to even screen and organize the screening of these movies wasn't even an Indian. He was a Pakistani. But because there was a Pakistani market also for Bollywood movies, because there was an Indian market also for Bollywood movies, and international market as well for Bollywood movies, there was some market he was able to tap into. And because he knew there was a market, he made sure that he could organize these movies for at least one show. And that one show used to be completely packed theater. So like 400 seats of the whole theater would be packed by Indians, mostly Indians or people from the Indian subcontinent, and maybe sometimes Americans, but very rarely. And Ranjana is the last movie, I think, Indian movie I saw in an Indian theater there. And for Ranjana, they were doing it in an American theater, but it was not organized by someone from an Indian subcontinent. So there was not much promotion of it by the movie theater people amongst the Indian or Indian subcontinent audiences. And because that movie was not promoted, and also that theater was showing Indian movies, like they had just barely, that theater organization had started showing Indian movies. So they started showing the Indian movies like for 1 month duration. So for 1 month, this movie ran in the theater. But on the last day when I went to see it, there were only like 5-6 people who watched the movie. So this is the kind of lifestyle a person has to live in a foreign country sometimes, when they are not living in like a very popular or Indian populated city. So like if you go to New York, these things might not happen. If you go and live in California, where my cousins live, for them, their movie theaters are there for Indians to go and watch movies. And for more than 20 years, the movie theaters in California have such access to movies, because there have been an Indian population, an Indian subcontinent population living in California for many decades. Whereas in Utah, where I went, Indian subcontinent population was coming up, but it wasn't as much to have a population impact on their population stays, except for maybe food, because we had Indian grocery stores, we had Indian and Pakistani food places, restaurants. So that was there. But again, there are so many things about India that can be there in a particular place that was not there. So we didn't have Bengali restaurants, we didn't have Marathi restaurants, we didn't even have a South Indian restaurant for until after like 10 years after I lived in that state. So not 10, maybe 8 years. Initially when I was there was only North Indian Punjabi food that was available. So we didn't even have Gujarati food. It was only standard North Indian food that we would get there. But this is how evolution of any place is. If people go and migrate to a different place, you will not always have the same luxuries that you were afforded when you were living in your own home country. And in my home country, where was I living? I was living in Mumbai. Mumbai is one of the cities of India which has access to so many cultural foods from all over India. So that's why, having grown in Mumbai only, I have this cosmopolitan outlook to appreciate not just food from a Bengali household, right? I appreciate food from South India, I appreciate food from North India, I appreciate food from Maharashtra, any part of India's food. I really appreciate eating, not just because I'm a Bengali, but also because I lived in a state which gives access to all these different kinds of foods. So likewise, when I went to US, yes, I didn't get access to different cultural foods of India. But what was there a flip side to this negative experience that I'm talking about? It was a negative experience, it was a sad experience, it was a painful experience. But what was the flip side? The flip side was I got to experience eating Mexican food, I got to experience eating Thai food, I got to experience eating Greek food. Mexican, Thai and Greek are my other alternate favorite foods apart from Indian and Chinese food that we got exposure to eating in India when growing up. So, and I wouldn't have, and Nepali food also I got exposure to eating. eating. And I found surprisingly that Nepali food has very much similar taste to Indian food. Same way with Pakistani food. If you go to a Pakistani restaurant in India, people discriminate between India and Pakistan. But if you go and eat in a Pakistani restaurant, and if you don't know they are Pakistani, you will see no difference in the quality and taste of food that you're eating. And it wouldn't matter to you whether they're Pakistani or Indian. It is food. The way they make the food, the way the samosas taste, or the way the chai tastes, or the way a chole ka sabzi tastes, they are all going to be pretty much similar to the Punjabi food that you will get in a typical North Indian restaurant. And yes, if they are from a particular place of Pakistan, they might be using some different kind of mirchis or something else in their spice, which might be slightly varying from an Indian perspective. But even then, more or less, 90% or even 99% the food will taste exactly the same, and you cannot distinguish only whether it's an Indian restaurant or a Pakistani restaurant. So see, when you go outside the country divides also completely blur out. It doesn't matter. And for an American who is going and eating in a Pakistani restaurant or an Indian restaurant, does it matter whether they eat in a Pakistani or Indian restaurant? If they like eating chole puri, they will like eating chole puri in a Pakistani restaurant also. They will like eating chole puri in an Indian restaurant also. We had all these different Pakistani Punjabi food in 3-4 Pakistani places and 3-4 Indian places. But what we didn't have in any of the Indian places initially when we lived, they didn't have any chaat at all. And being an Indian, we love eating pani puri, we love eating sev puri and all that. So the only time, 1 or 2 times, I have gone and eaten any chaat initially in the first 5-7 years has been at a Pakistani place only, and it tastes exactly like the same chaat that I would eat in India. So for me, I was thankful only that because those Pakistanis were the first ones who came to Utah before me as an Indian who entered Utah. That's why only they have this big shop, which is selling these foods. They also had to have lived there for a while, for 5 years, 10 years, whatever number of years, to decide that I'm missing Indian food, I'm missing this chole puri, I'm missing these chaat, I'm missing Indian movies, I want to watch Bollywood movies. Bollywood movies are way popular in Pakistan also. So they are missing the Bollywood movies, because I never heard about the same uncle who screened Bollywood movies screen any Pakistani movie. I don't even know of a single Pakistani movie right now because of the internet. After like almost 15 years of my life, I finally know of some Pakistani Hindi shows, Urdu shows that are very popular among people like me. And that's why I have an online Facebook group and online group of Instagram friends whom I don't even know in person. They could be living in some different random country other than India, but we love watching Hindi shows, Urdu shows, and like romantic shows, and certain kind of shows are our enjoyment common ground. So they post show about this Pakistani show called Suno Chanda. I haven't yet watched it, but I have seen some of its clips, and I saw that show has exactly similar kind of setting, similar kind of story and plot line that we watch in India, and we Indians also would love and enjoy watching. So see, country divide doesn't matter, religious divide doesn't matter, cultural divide doesn't matter. Nothing matters in this internet age. And in the internet age, in the day of travel, because it's living in India right now, you can get exposure because of Netflix, because of YouTube, because of so many other social media channels that have come up and apps that have come up. You can sit and watch even a movie from any other language. I also have a group of friends. We enjoy watching Korean and Chinese movies or shows. Actually, not movies. We enjoy watching dramas. So because we are fan of dramas and romantic comedies, we watch. They will recommend like 10 shows, but if I have the time, I end up watching one show. But we have this common interest, and because we have this common interest, we sit and watch these things. So basically, what I'm trying to talk about is a part of Ascension journey, and I did digress a little, but part of the Ascension journey is this: learning how to evolve in life, learning how to enjoy life. And in evolving in life and in enjoying life, you will get some circumstantial challenges in your life. Some circumstances will be there that happened to your life when you were growing up in your first 18-20 years of age. Some challenges will happen as you are aging, and each and every challenge that is away from the norm is a path that has been set up by your soul for you to experience the challenge and evolve from that challenge. Most of us, when we are not evolving or when we get stagnant and stuck in life, what happens with us? We start feeling like victims to our circumstances. We start thinking like, what is happening to me, God? Why is it happening? We start crying, we are sad, we are depressed. You look at me right now, I am probably looking a little sad and depressed, and when I was talking about some of my painful memories, I was feeling like crying as well a little bit and got emotional about it. But again, every time we face something which makes us emotional, that is also a good thing. This is the thing, another thing that every one of us has to accept about ourselves, that in part of the ascension process, in part of the twin flame process, in part of our awakening process, acknowledging our humanity is important. Acknowledging that sometimes certain challenges that come in our life are more difficult than others. Sometimes those challenges are difficult because we're doing something that is different from what our friends are doing, what our colleagues are doing, what people from our country are doing, what people from our culture are doing. And every time though we are doing something different, or every time some challenge occurs that is different from a challenge that we are not seeing anyone else around us handling, it is only a point for us to grow and learn something about ourselves, something about our life, and something about living. So if you get and learn those lessons about living, and if you evolve from those living processes, and if you start enjoying and being happy and being joyful, even when the things that happened were really sad and difficult and could have produced anger and disappointment and other emotions in you, even then, if you have overcome it, if you have lived through it, if you have learned from it, then you have grown, and then you are in the path of ascension and awakening. And the more you grow, the more you learn. Even now, 10 years back's experiences, 20 years back's experiences, if I am narrating it to someone like I am doing in this video, I am learning something new about myself, about my life journey, and also about what I should be doing in my future next. Because every time you examine something about your life, or narrate something about your life, or share something about your life, you are giving yourself the opportunity to learn something new from that experience and grow and evolve from that experience. So what I want every one of you to do today or any time when some sad experience comes up in your life, just remember this, that this too shall pass. Also remember, there are likely other thousands of people or millions of people who are likely facing something similar like you. They may not be facing exactly the same problem, but they will have some commonality with you. And from those people you can start learning, and you don't necessarily have to have those people right now in your life present, like right here besides you, in your home, in your society, in your culture, in your country, in your place of work. They may not necessarily be right in front of you, but even if they are not right in front of you, there are people who are undergoing the same problems. You just have to find your tribe, and finding that tribe can happen anywhere from any corner of the world. Just Google up something related to what you're undergoing, and you will start finding your tribe. You can Google up, you can go to Instagram, and even if that is not possible, you can go to YouTube also, and even if that is not possible, you can just pray to God. And if you pray to God, God starts opening those doors for you that to you previously were closed, only because you didn't ask those questions to God. Because ascension, awakening, and twin flame journey is about bringing us closer to God, bringing us closer to other human beings. And when we start asking the right questions, when we start requesting silent help also from the universe does keep sending us help. The only thing is, universe is always helping us, but sometimes we don't realize the help that the universe is sending our way. But the moment we start acknowledging we have a problem, that is when our eyes start opening up to the possibilities of the solutions also that are existing for our problem. So never get disheartened with the problem you're facing. Never get disheartened right now with COVID. Everyone is in separation mode. Many countries implemented lockdown modules and other different modules, which make harder for many human beings to enjoy their life or do normal things in their life. But just because your normal life's activity has been curbed and shifted and changed doesn't mean that your life has to stop shifting and changing and evolving. Because just because you cannot leave your house and go and enjoy some normal things that you used to enjoy before doesn't mean there are new avenues that haven't opened up for you. For the first few months of COVID lockdown, what I did when I was living here was I was playing video games. I never used to play video games. I had a boyfriend 10 years back who used to love playing video games, and I never engaged in it. I have a brother 20 years back. In teen years, he used to love playing video games. I hardly played any video games entire 20 years of my adult existence. And despite that, I got into playing video games because the lockdown gave me this opportunity to play a video game. The video looked very interesting when I saw the advertisement of it while listening to a video on YouTube, and I found the video and advertisement intriguing. That's why I downloaded the app, started playing the video games. I got addicted also to playing the video games for a few months, but I was not doing any job. I still don't do any job right now. So though I was not working, I was doing other things, because at home you have so many other things to do. I was exploring the creative side of life. So I was making paintings and doing craft work, artwork. I was doing many things to keep my mind mentally engaged. So that is important during the COVID lockdowns or whatever other COVID related difficulty that is coming up in your life, because many families are also facing a lot of conflict in their life. And why is that conflict happening? The conflict is happening that if you are locked down in the same house with 5-6 family members or 5-6 roommates, and you don't find the common ground with these roommates or with your family members, if you're not willing to accept each other or not willing to forgive each other despite the differences, then what starts happening? Clashes happen, conflicts happen, and then it is very difficult to have a very joyful existence with people. But it's okay when you're not having a joyful existence also with some people. It is important for you to acknowledge that aspect of your living also, that you are not enjoying your life with the family or friends that you had chosen previously, with whom maybe before COVID lockdowns it was possible for you to enjoy life, but now it is not possible. This happened with me, with my family. My family was not very supportive of many choices that I was making, and there were very logical reasons for my choices. I will post a video on that also later on. But basically there was conflict arising, and I did have an option to move away and live in a different house. So I moved away. I'm living in all by myself in a different house. And now what has the opportunity that has arisen because I live in a different house? If I was living in the same house as my brother and dad, then in the middle of the evening or middle of the night, I cannot post a YouTube video because they might want to sleep, or early in the morning I cannot post a video and start recording something online because they might be sleeping. So I can do any video I wish any time of the day. So there is always a flip side to a negative thing. So whatever the COVID situation is bringing negatively in your life, start looking at the silver lining, start looking at the flip side, start looking at the opportunities that it is bringing in your life. And also Close those opportunities that are proving to be stressful, close those opportunities that are not proving to be right for you at that moment in time for you, and be ready to acknowledge, be brave to acknowledge that it is okay to be different from your family. It is okay to have difference of opinion with your family or friends. It is okay to hold a different perspective about what your ideal life should look like. It is okay to have different hobbies and interests. It is okay for you to have a different kind of mindset than what you have been raised or what society has raised you to believe should be done. It is okay for you to change the entire trajectory of your life, because COVID is also bringing many people some stressful circumstances surrounding their work. For me, stressful circumstances surrounding my work and professional and even personal life happened almost 7 years back. So it happened long before COVID happened. But it happened long before COVID happened. Why? Because I got in those 7 years, this whole 7 years of my life that I have returned from US and been in India, I have done a lot of self reflection, lot of meditations, lot of other things to make myself balanced and create a balance and maintain a positive, equal, mostly positive. I cannot say that every day I am positive. Some days I have good days and I am smiling and laughing. Some days I have bad days and I'm sad and depressed. But whatever it is, even when I'm depressed, even when I am happy, the main thing is it is important to accept life the way it is. And also, if there are things that are making you sad, angry, depressed, conflict ridden in your personal or professional life, start writing down why it is doing so. Start talking to your soul. If you start talking to God, then what happens? You're also indirectly having a conversation with your own heart and soul. And as you start talking to God or talking to your own heart and soul, you will get the answers that you're looking for. Sometimes the answer will come 1 month later, sometimes the answer will come the next day, sometimes the answer may even come 1 second later. So it depends. In the right time, in the right divine time, as it is called, in the right divine time, the right solution will come up. In fact, the same solution might have come up for you even 5 years back, even 2 years back. You might have had those same conflicts with your family or same type of conflicts with your family, friends, colleagues, and bosses, or anyone with whom you're having some conflict or challenging situation. They might have all happened in the past. Right now, just certain circumstances are triggering it to happen even more often. But any time in our life, be it irrespective of COVID, any time in our life we are having these triggers from certain communication given to us by our friends, family, colleagues, whoever we are interacting with. When we are getting these triggers, learn to discern slowly why those triggers are happening, why it is causing some problems for us, what we should be doing next. Ask that question to the universe and you will slowly start finding those answers. I hope this video was informative. It's a long video, but I hope it will help you in doing some self reflection and in increasing your self awareness about the awakening ascension process, as well as the COVID related issues. COVID is also part of the ascension process, which many people are failing to recognize, but COVID is happening as a part of the ascension process. And whatever COVID is causing to shift and change and disrupt in your life, it is only happening because you only set up these disruptions to happen in your life at this point of time, so that you can awaken to your soul purpose, so that you can awaken to your life purpose, or you can at least awaken to becoming healthier, happier, balanced humans and evolve into the next stage of your human journey. Thank you.